She literally, his hospital picture looks like he's holding the sign. I mean, it literally does.
I'm laying in the hospital, in the
It
nurse's
is the
hospital.
craziest, it's
And I'm
funny.
already raised up, I got my hands on the side of the sun.
It's hilarious. Yeah, we just laugh.
But Harper
He's already holding her hand up. Yep, she sure is.
holding her hand up and looking around.
Yep.
We don't have to go to
Chris is going to go and watch the girls. So I go and watch one of the girls. And so we're sitting in front seat.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Adult Sunday School for Walnut Grove Baptist Church. Today is April 25th. And we welcome you. We have several on site here today. You're welcome to join us here. There's plenty of space to scatter out. And then if you can join us from home, if you know someone who would enjoy being a part of a Bible study class. Now, one of the elements that's missing, I think in a Sunday school class, you have time to ask questions, make comments, a little more conversation. Probably the most, I think, maybe the most valuable part of a Sunday school time is the conversation that takes place as everybody's sipping their coffee and arriving and getting caught up and just having general conversation. That part of the fellowship. We haven't gotten back into that place yet, but we're moving that way, and I'm always keeping my eyes and ears open about what other churches are doing and how other people are worshiping, and there's a great deal of variety out there, and there are many people who have done a number of different kinds of things. There are still some people who are having drive-up church. Some are doing exclusively virtual church or sending it out to homes, and then different ways of getting together on the church property and meeting. So I would confess that I used to, from week to week, I was keeping up with statistics and trends, levels of infection or hospitalization, and I guess that sensor on my body or in my mind wore out. It kind of got tired, I guess. So I have to confess I don't do that quite as much anymore. Well, next Saturday is May the 1st. Already in May. May Day. It used to be thought of as a time when you swing around the maypole and usher in spring. I have no idea. I have not done the research. Why would someone choose that phrase to announce a catastrophe? May Day, I don't know. I don't think the first day of spring is a disaster or a reason for calling out for help. But next Saturday, between 2 and 4, there will be a baby shower here, a baby celebration for Miriam and Austin Reeves. I think many of Miriam's friends, and probably from high school or maybe even family, probably not family, but just called her Morgan, but that was her last name. But
No, her last name is Killian. It's Reeves. It's Reeves now.
I know, but Morgan was her last name on Facebook.
Well, on Facebook.
Yeah. I'll have to prove y'all wrong later on. I don't have time to do it right now. But her name is Miriam, and she's expecting a child. We don't know its name yet, and it doesn't have a Facebook account yet. But Fellowship Hall here at our church, and their gift selections are at Amazon and Target. So pray for that couple. Also, we know that Ned and Betsy's daughter and son-in-law out in Las Vegas are expecting a child to add to the boys will soon have. I don't know if they've learned if it's a brother or sister, but pray for that family and pray for Pam especially as she inspects and expects Mother's Day is May the 9th. Church-wide brunch at 10 o'clock and then worship at 11, recognizing all the women in our church and the ladies of our church and the mothers specifically or particularly. June 6th is homecoming for Walnut Grove. It'll be the first full day of full Sunday school, children's Sunday school, young children, young adults, teens, young adults and seniors, Sunday school at 10 o'clock. Worship at 11. Phil Waldrop is going to be our guest speaker. We haven't had Phil in a while. Looking forward to having him come and deliver our message that day. And then homecoming dinner will be at 12:30. Father's Day is June 20th, another church-wide brunch then. July 17th, Vacation Bible School, our full day on that Saturday. August 1st, Jason Runnels is going to be with us. And then in September, we're going to do our best to have our dedication Sunday for our Christmas boxes. October 31st is Tricks and Treats. Of course, the big holiday season will kind of begin on that night. Thanksgiving and Christmas to follow, and we don't have any set plans right now on how we're going to observe that or approach that. But that's why we're open for the Lord's leadership and your suggestion if they coincide. Today we're looking at chapter 22 of the Gospel of Luke. It is part 20 in the series, and I've entitled this myself, The Puzzle. A young Christian, a new Christian, approaches their faith or embraces their faith or grows in their faith in a specific way. The Bible speaks about being a babe in Christ or being new in the faith. The Bible also talks about being a novice. There are offices that the Bible speaks about, and it says don't lay hands on a novice. In other words, do not ordain or put a person who's a young Christian in a position of mature leadership. Why would you have to say that to a church? And yet, I know I've seen many times people who have only been Christians for just a little while find themselves teaching class or serving as a deacon or some preaching, singing. And, we want to serve. We want to contribute. There are things that we perhaps would like to do to express our faith. But I think sometimes in the church we must be careful, as the Bible itself cautions us, not to impress people into service when they are not ready. Said that to say this: if you've been a Christian for 5 years, maybe you know exactly the time and date when you became a Christian. Maybe you can only guess. Knowing the date is not all that important. I know the date and time. I have been the kind of person who has kept journals or written down thoughts or important times, so I can research those and find those in some of my notes. Started keeping a notebook. My grandmother helped me begin to look at verses of Scripture, and so I have little notebooks where I was just studying this verse or that, or writing my thoughts as I read through the Bible for the very first time in my life. I was 14 years of age. When you've been a Christian for 5 years, there should be, for you and for the observation of others, some level of growth. You should be studying the Bible in a different way. You should be receiving greater instruction from the Scriptures. Your thoughts about God and your walk with God should be more complex. It should be, it starts out as something that you need to feed or inform or learn, and then it begins to be something that feeds you, something that nourishes you. After you've been a Christian for 10 years, there should be another pattern of things you're looking for in the Scriptures and things that you can see. there should be evidences of a more mature faith. There's not perhaps a prescription for everybody, but something just for you. Your walk with God is going to be unique to you. It's different than everybody else's. But as you look at it, if you've been a Christian for 15 years or 20, 30 or 40 years, you should see increments. You know, I see songs, and sometimes I see this acted out in reality. If you've ever gone into a home, or you're buying a new house, or you're looking at houses, have you ever walked into the room that maybe all the furniture might be gone? Maybe the drapes and the curtains are gone. There's no decorations. But you can walk into a room and say, this must have been one of the children's rooms. You might be able to guess that, even with no clues there, hardly any at all. They might have Star Wars wallpaper, perhaps. Maybe they have little pinholes all over the place where they pin their posters on the wall. So, you know, little things like that. You might see soda pop or Kool-Aid stains on the carpet. Little clues. But, you know, if you go over to the closet door and just look at the frame around the closet door, do you know what you're most likely to see in the child's room? Well, just on the frame, on the woodwork there. You know what you might see?
Height chart?
Height chart.
A height chart, little notches, little pencil scratches, dates maybe. You know, people will just write on the wall. And they'll say, you know, they'll back the child up to that frame. It almost always is the closet. It could be any place, but sometimes that you can buy these at the school store, I guess, or even at Walmart. They have that you unroll it in a height chart like that. But more often than not, you see little pencil marks as over the years as that child has grown taller and taller. There should be evidences just like that in your life that you've grown in your faith. And I want to show you today, we're going to look at the passage in the Gospel of Luke where Jesus and his disciples will be observing the Jewish Passover together, and then he will be introducing them to a new custom, a new tradition, it's more than just custom or tradition, though. It's a new ordinance, something that he wants them to do. And the amazing thing is that even though it's not clearly implied in any of the Gospels, his intention was to let them know we're not going to celebrate Passover anymore. We're going to observe what we call the Lord's Supper, communion. That's amazing. For thousands of years, the Jews had killed a lamb and celebrated Passover together. They've enjoyed the Seder meal together. And here Jesus said, get used to different. This is different. To suggest here is something to take place of that. It's just unbelievable. Now, however, in this passage, when I first studied it, I needed to learn a little bit about the Passover. So you've got to go back in the book of Exodus to learn from the Old Testament what was the Passover. So I had to grow a little bit. I needed more information. You know, I really didn't understand how I needed to understand as I became an adult Christian how Jewish people celebrate the Passover today. And that's primarily through the Seder meal. I remember the very first time I saw the Lord's Supper observed in church, and the very first time that I observed the Lord's Supper. It was very strange. I'd never seen a ritual like that before. But at this point in my Christian walk, and I want to challenge you this morning, and what we're going to be doing today is looking at that same passage, that same information, and say, there's something else here. There's something foundational. There's something fundamental here, and it might be something that for many, many years it didn't catch your attention. You just glossed over it, or you saw it as a minor part of the story. As I've grown older in my faith, and as I continue to grow and learn, it's not just having knowledge or knowing things, it's not just being able to win at Jeopardy. The things that I know about God make my life better. They make me stronger. They give me peace and courage and confidence. And so the things that I add to my life from the Scriptures and from my experience in my walk with God every day change me. And that's really the greatest point. I don't want to just know stuff. I don't want to just know things and be thought of as a knowledgeable person. I'd like to be, and I hope that you would like to be, someone upon whom the Word of God has an effect. It improves you. It makes you stronger. It makes you wiser. It helps you, guides you. So today we're going to look at this passage. Now, I want to talk with you a little bit about puzzles first, because I want you to see here that something I didn't see before is that Jesus is putting together the pieces of the plan of God that he came to execute. I believe you have a plan. God has a plan for your life. It's different than his plan for me. God created you for a purpose, for a reason. Several years ago, Pastor Rick Warren, the pastor at the Saddleback Church out in California, he first wrote a book called The Purpose-Driven Church, because their church seemed to be an unusually fresh and new and exciting church, and so many people wanted to have a saddleback kind of church. And so he wrote a book, and he says, the reason our church is observable is because we believe we have a purpose from God, and we're executing that. Some people just meet, they just get together. They don't have any aim or goal. They don't feel like they're on a mission from God. They just are having service. So he wrote The Purpose-Driven Church. It was very popular. It sold millions. And then Billy Graham called him up one day. I'm just reciting from information that I've gained. Billy Graham called him up and he says, "You know what we need, Rick?" First of all, if Billy Graham ever called you, that's mind-blowing right there. He never called me. You know what we need, Rick? We need a purpose-driven life. And so he compelled Brother Warren to write that book. And when he wrote that book, The Purpose-Driven Life. In other words, not just an aimless life, not just banging around like a pinball in a pinball machine or an arcade machine, not just making things up as you go like Indiana Jones, but having a life where where things are building and growing, and things are, you're following the plan of God for your life. The reason you were born, the reason, I think he starts out, he talks a little bit about surfing, I think, in the Purpose-Driven Church, but in the Purpose-Driven Life, he talks about, why on earth am I here? We kind of cast a lot of questions. Why on earth do you do that? Why on earth? But he was saying, why on earth am I here? You could rearrange that question to get the greatest meaning. Why am I here on earth? Why am I here on earth? We talk about the individuality of snowflakes. You're individual, not just your fingerprints or your DNA. God created you just as the prophet Jeremiah was told. He says it's just like God taking a lump of clay, and he says, now we're all made out of clay, but he says he makes something that he wants to have. Something, he makes something, he says, whatsoever he wills. The potter. And he says he makes something that he needs, that he wants. And he sits down, I need this. You know what, kids, when we were little, there wasn't much creative help. You know what we always made when we had Play-Doh in our hands or clay? ashtray. I have no idea, but we made. Did you ever make an ashtray? That's what I made. Make an ashtray. I guess because my dad needed one. He didn't seem to know what it was. You could always find my dad. Follow the burn marks or the ash.
Exactly.
The Purpose-Driven Life book sold multi-millions because it seemed that people wanted not just to have a long life or even a good life or a healthy life, but he seemed to think, and he was proposing that what I believe is probably true, that we want a life that has meaning. It means something. When you die, they're just going to put your name on the tombstone, the day you were born, the day you died. Lots of humorous tombstones. I guess I enjoy them more than I should. But what is the preacher or the family, what are people going to say at your memorial service? This is who they were. This is why I love them. This is what they said. This is what they did. This is who they were. Many years ago, the local funeral home directors called me and said, we have a client. When the funeral home calls you, they're talking about their client. You, after pastoring for a while, you know what you're talking about. We have a client. We're going to be burying him in the cemetery out there by your church. Okay? How can I help? Well, you don't know him. We don't know him. We don't know anybody that's ever heard of him. But somebody, he has means that he left behind. We're taking care of his service. We're going to bury him today out there at the cemetery. Would you come out there and just say a few words over his grave? I said, I'll do that. I'd be glad to. So it was a gray, cold, dreary, rainy day. It was just an awful day. A day that you just wouldn't want to get out at all. And I remember going there. And I met them up on the hill. The cemetery was kind of on a hill. You could see it from our house. And I met them there at the appropriate time, at the designated time. And it was just the couple of grave diggers and two of the funeral directors. A hearse. My car drove up there, just a little piece, but it was raining. They gave me a little card. It said his name on there, a little bit about him. What little they knew was on this little obituary card. And I said a few things. I don't remember what I said. He didn't have any family there, no friends. There was just me, two funeral directors, two grave diggers. That's all. It was very, very sad. Very sad. And they handed me a shovel, and I helped cover the grave. And we went away. Didn't have a stone, probably doesn't have a stone today. Nobody ever came and put a stone there. We all want a purpose in life. Here are some building blocks. Now, this is a puzzle in a way, and it's something that children use for learning and for fun. This kind of puzzle, or this kind of toy, this kind of apparatus are building blocks, and they're really for using your imagination to build whatever you can imagine, to build whatever you can think of. Kind of looks like maybe some great building there, maybe someone's home, who knows, and just kind of stacking things together. You know, I enjoy seeing what children might come up with for this, and they're just kind of can make anything that they can think of. I think Legos were probably invented during my late childhood. I began to see less or fewer building blocks and more Legos. They lock together. And really, you didn't get any instructions with them. And this is one of those later ones where it had all different kinds of shapes and buttons on them and different kinds of ways that they locked together. But the purpose was the same as the building blocks. Make a crane, make a boat or a car, a bridge. Just put them all together like this. Make a mountain. Make anything you want. Whatever you can think of, whatever you feel like your skill level is, do that. But a jigsaw puzzle is something entirely different. It's something entirely different. When you open a puzzle like this, the point or the purpose is not to see what you can make. That's not it. It's not, I wonder if you use your imagination and use these pieces to make something. No, that's not it at all. Now, I've always thought this was the most pointless thing in the entire world. This is done by Heinz Ketchup. And this person is just about to be finished. They've got one last piece. They're going to put it into place. First of all, let me say, I don't like jigsaw puzzles. But let me tell you something. All of my life, my mother enjoyed jigsaw puzzles. All of my life. When I was a little boy, we might see, there were times when we only had a kitchen table. Some places we lived, we didn't have a dining room. But my mother's last house, she had a kitchen table and she had a dining room table. And she lived there for many years, the last place she ever lived. But all of my life, wherever we lived, my mother occasionally would just buy a puzzle. And she'd scatter out the pieces on the table. And over a matter of days, she would put that puzzle together. And every once in a while, she'd let me and my brother help. Have you ever had help like that? Now, I'm not sure. I've just told you that I think my mother enjoyed puzzles. But I'm not sure she enjoyed puzzles. She never looked like she was having fun. She was always very quiet. It was not something that we would joke and laugh. In other words, my mother, she didn't work on it long. She might just work on it for 20 or 30 minutes for a few days. She might just run in there, but when my mother was puzzling, she didn't say a word. She was very zoned in, very serious. It was like it was work. Mother did a lot of things you're supposed to have fun at like it was work. One of the things I had to learn when I was growing up was how to have fun. My mother worked hard though, and she knew how to work hard, and I think a lot of times work kind of got into her blood. And everything, just about everything became work. Even fun became work. But she taught us, I'm being a little bit, I'm exaggerating a little bit. She did talk to us. You know what she told, you know what I remember? You know when you dump a puzzle out of the box, you know what the first thing you do is?
Do the corners.
Well, not yet. That's part two.
Turn everything over.
Turn everything over. Make sure everything's face up. Make sure everything's face up. All the pieces, because the backside is just blank. It's got color and pattern on it. Turn all that. And then Liz suggested, then find the corners. You can look through there, and there are, in this kind of puzzle, there are only 4 pieces that meet that criteria. They're specially made. They're different shape than all the other pieces. Those 4 pieces are the corners. You can find them. And it's kind of easy to do, even for a child. And then you do the outside border like this. That's the way you put a puzzle together. You start with the corners, and then you start going down the side. Now, this is the way God wants you to find purpose and meaning in your life. God doesn't just give you life and then you make up whatever you want, like building blocks or Legos. He doesn't say, here's life. Here's your life. I'm going to give you this many years. What are you going to do with it? Well, I'm going to make a bridge. I'm going to make a mountain. God doesn't do that. That's not how God gives purpose to your life. He says, here's a box. God says, I painted this picture. Several years ago, somebody gave us lots of puzzles. There's a snowman on a farm scene, 300 pieces, large pieces. Snowman, tractor, barn. This is a little cottage. It's got snow on the roof, 300 pieces. Jigsaw puzzle, 18 by 24. Puppy dogs. Now, I have put some puzzles together, and to me, the front lid of the box is indispensable. It helps me put the puzzle together. As a matter of fact, my mother was very good at putting puzzles together, and she set the box just like that. She set it at the end of the table, or at the end of the puzzle. That looks like a part of the puppy dog's nose. That looks like a candy cane. It goes over here in this. And she could put pieces of the puzzle like this out here in their proper place before anything else was touching it. Another 300 piece. I have several puzzles here. If we have some children in church today, I'm going to see if I can get rid of some of them. But they're always doing this on their phones or their pads. I doubt if they'll have any interest at all in putting together a puzzle, but who knows? Every once in a while you might find an old soul. I love to see when little children find out that what we used to do years ago is fun, and they want to do it too. God has a picture. God has a portrait. God has a plan. And that's what he wants you to put together in your life. He doesn't want you to just make something up. He doesn't want you to use your imagination to come up with something. He says, no. This is what I want your life to look like. Now, you can do anything you want to. You can even take an X-Acto knife and you can cut some of the pieces of the puzzle so it'll fit where you want it to. You can put the pieces together in ways, you can cut all the corners off and just make one mess out of it, but it'll never look like the picture on the box. It'll never look like what God says, this is why you were born. See, God has a plan for my life, and he knows what it's supposed to look like and how it's supposed to proceed. Let's look at this in Luke 22. Then came the day of unleavened bread on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, go and make preparations for us to eat the Passover. Where do you want us to prepare for it? They asked. He replied, as you enter the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him to the house that he enters, and say to the owner of the house. Now the owner of the house is different than it's not him carrying the water. The teacher asked, where is the guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples? He will show you a large room upstairs, all furnished. Make preparations there. Then Peter and John left and found things just as Jesus had told them, so they prepared the Passover. When the hour came, in other words, when it was the right time, Jesus and his disciples reclined at the table, and he said to them, I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. It's the word Pascha. It's my passion. For I tell you that I will not eat again until it finds fulfillment in the kingdom of God. You see, this is the part that we're getting to the part now about the Passover meal and the Lord's Supper. What about the part we just went through? Jesus said, okay. Do you know who instituted the Passover? It was God. God told Moses, we need to do this, do that with the lamb, do this with the blood. Don't eat no leaven in the bread. Stay in your house. Everybody in the house is going to be safe. I'm going to pass over your house on a night of judgment when many of the firstborn of Egypt are going to die. So Jesus already had God's pattern, or the initial part of the pattern, and he says, there's going to be a man with a jar of water. He's going to be carrying it on his head, or on his shoulder. And he says, follow him to where he's going. Now, Jesus was saying, go there and say, we want to ask the master of the house, where is the guest room where we can have my disciples come? And so Jesus we see that there are steps that he's following. There are pieces that he's putting into play. There are pieces of the puzzle of the last hours of his life that he is putting into position. Jesus never woke up in the morning and says, wonder what we're going to do today. What am I going to wear today? Where shall we go? What shall we do? No, he says, he picked out Peter and John. They're two pieces of his puzzle. He sent them. He told them exactly who to look for, where to go, and what to do. And then it said when the hour came, and they knew, they'd said, we're going to do this at 6 p.m. We're going to do this at the hour when the day changes to Passover day. There's no randomness, no chance. Yes, it's not excluding imagination, but Jesus had been given a mission, and he had a purpose for being here, and he was executing. Now, let me tell you this, and you know this. I don't know where I'm supposed to be, or sometimes I don't know when the hour is. Sometimes I don't know who to look for, who's going to lead me to where I need to be. I don't know the right questions to ask. I don't know where the right places are. But Jesus does. He does. Look right here. Go to this place. You're going to see a guy. How does he know that? He knows. I don't know. Is he going to? What's in the pot? It's water. It's a pot of water. Jesus says it's going to be a guy carrying a pot of water, and he just said, "Follow him." I'd like to have seen that. This guy with a pot of water. See these two guys following him. What's up? Carry on, man. We're just following you. Okay. And then he walks in the house. He says, "Master, somebody followed me. Two guys followed me here." They come in and said, "Well, the master said that he wants you to show us the guest room." And this guy seemed, I don't know, he seemed like he's part of the plan. He said, "Okay, I've been waiting for you." He didn't say that. He didn't say, "I've been looking for you." He says, he just falls right into step. He shows them this right here is where he can meet with his disciples. This is a man who had an upstairs room, who had an upper room that he wasn't using on Passover, and somehow Jesus knew about it. Not just somehow, he knew about it. And so when I look at this passage now, there's a deeper way of seeing. This is not just about the observance of Passover. This is not just about the Last Supper or the last meal that Jesus would have to his disciples. This is about Jesus saying, I'm not just doing what I think is best. Jesus was telling us here, everything, I'm touching all the bases. I'm dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. No, I don't know how to live my life like that, and that's why I believe it's so important for me to follow Jesus. Maybe he turns to Peter and John. Jesus says, "What do you guys think? Where should we have Passover?" They'd probably already been wondering that. They had always had Passover or celebrate Seder with their families. And they said, "What are we going to do?" They'd had Passover before, since following Jesus. Peter, John, where do you think we ought to have? Well, it's a little late, Jesus. It's tonight. It's tonight. Do you know when he says prepare for a Passover? Do you know that Peter and John were going to have to go and find a lamb and take it to the temple and have them the lamb butchered and have its entrails separated from the exterior of its, to have the fur or the flesh taken off. It was going to have to be roasted. In other words, he's not talking about setting out the plates and the napkin holders. There's unleavened bread, there's stuff. And so Peter and John, what do you think we ought to do? No, he didn't do that at all. He gave them specific instructions. Now, they already had some specific instructions from the scriptures about how to prepare. So Jesus didn't have to tell them, go find a lamb, and they had to collect some of the blood in a vase to take it to where they're going to be celebrating Seder, and they were going to put that lamb on the lintel and the doorposts. So they already had that part, and so we study the Bible to learn what's the other pieces and parts. We're putting something together, and everything, you can't just put it where you want to. You can't put it where you think it fits. You can't put it where you hope it will go. Every piece every single piece of 300-piece puzzle, there's only one place it can possibly fit. Only one place. And it's not just that everything fits or you used up all the pieces, it's that it looks like the portrait in the mind of God when you get finished. The whole point is at the end of my life, at the end of your life, God looks at you and says, that's what I was looking for right there. That's what I wanted. That always was a dilemma for me. You know, we go over to the Sunday school class, there's a puzzle on the wall there. Someone put a puzzle together and then put tape on the back or glue and then framed it and put it up on the wall. I always thought, now there's an idea. I remember that Mother would have that last piece, and we had been watching her, and as I said, we tried to help, but I don't ever remember helping very much. And I remember Mom putting that piece into place. And she would stand back and she would look at it. And in just a heartbeat later, do you know what she would do?
Tear it apart.
She'd just tear it apart, put it back in the box, and put it on the shelf. I'd go, oh! Hey! Let's enjoy it for a few days. Let's soak it up. No, when she put that last piece, she just kind of sat back, kind of like the scene from American Vacation where they got to the Grand Canyon. You know, they're standing at the Grand Canyon, puts his arms around him, and he goes, okay, let's go. And then he jumped in the car and took off to whatever they was going to see next.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's only like a minute.
Yeah. What is it, Grimleys, Wembley's? What were their names? What kind of Griswolds. Going to Wally World. You go, okay. And they pile back in the car and they take it off. But God is going to savor and enjoy. He's going to frame. He's going to glue together and frame your life and mine. He's going to preserve it for all eternity because I think He really enjoys seeing when we've followed His design and His steps and we've searched His intent. And God says, I want it to look like puppies. I want your life to look like a cottage or like a barn with a tractor in front of it. That's because He said, that's what I've painted for your life. I created you, and that's who you are. And so, in my life, I see the scramble, I see the disarray, I see the confusion and all the scatter. But I know that God has a purpose for my life, a plan. And as He guides me, as He leads me, as I seek His will, He tells me where to go and what to do and who to see and what questions to ask. And I find a lot of how to make the preparations from the Scriptures. And because when my life is finished, I hope that, as Paul said, that my puzzle, all the pieces are in place, Paul said. I've finished my course. And God wants to work with you like that. I hope that you're growing and maturing, and you're not going to finish. You know, the very last piece that you put into place is maybe the last breath that you take. But it is, for me, a part of my Christian maturity, I think, has been to be able to grow to say, to enjoy seeing the puzzle begin to look like what God said it should look like from the very beginning. You can work on a puzzle for a long time and it doesn't seem to look like anything. Do you know what the writer of Hebrews says? He says, keep your eyes focused on the front of the box of the puzzle. He says, keep your eyes upon Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. Because that's ultimately what our puzzle is about. Okay? God bless you. Thank you for coming. If you want one of these puzzles, you better come and get it before I give them away in lamb service. If you ain't left over, you're welcome to them. I can promise you, I'm not going to put them together.